Coming up today on The Story.
The pastor of my local church, he asked if I would help the youth group with an Easter concert. And you have to understand my arrogance, I suppose, at this stage, with my youthfulness. I was sort of thinking, oh, look, these guys are a bit rinky-dink. So here I am saying to the pastor, look, thanks, but I don't know if I can help them. Probably within about a week, I was asking myself the question in my bedroom, Lord, what do you want me to do?
The Story.
G'day, I'm Jimmy Colefax. Welcome to The Story. Well, recently on the program, we spoke with Diana Abruzzi, who pioneered an international federation that helps women start businesses. She also told us about her adventures smuggling Bibles into China in her younger years. Today, we speak with her son, Phil Fusco, and hear his story. We'll find out about the impact his mother has had on his life and how he became an international jet-setting business executive living in Dubai. All that and more is coming up as Eric Scatterbo chats with Phil Fusco in a series of interviews.
Phil, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Eric. Great to be here.
Glad to have you with us. And yes, we heard your mother's story. She had a huge impact on your life. Is that right?
Yes, she does. Mum's one of those people that is probably bigger than life in her own right. She's a great friend. She's more than just a mother. She's a really great friend, and I think Mum and I have been quite close since I was young.
Well, I would imagine so, yes.
She's the sort of person that sort of endears herself to you, and she's always been there as a rock. As kids, when you're growing up, you have your ups and downs, and Mum just has this empathy ability that she just knows how to connect with you or anybody at that given moment, and you feel like she just understands you. And a young guy like me that was very idealistic and big ideas and very entrepreneurial, I think she was always there to sort of pick me up, clean me down, you know what I mean, set me on my way sort of stuff. So
yeah, now that you mentioned it, she said that you also help her. You proofread like some of her speeches and that kind of thing? Yeah,
look, that's right. Mum and I, we pretty much are a tag team match.
Oh, okay.
She's my biggest advocate, and I'm probably her biggest advocate.
Yeah.
But we all have different gifts and skills, and one of those that I have is obviously creative writing and thought leadership, if you wish. So Mum often asks me just to put my eyes over her speeches, and I just, sometimes help her structure the sentences, or maybe I see a light of inspiration to give some sort of oomph or some sort of creative idea to add salt and pepper, into what she's saying, and it works quite well. And I don't know if you know, or Mum said, she certainly wouldn't be embarrassed about it, but she has dyslexia.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So sometimes she can't quite communicate what she's trying to say, but I can see the pattern in the jigsaw puzzle, and sometimes I restructure it and just to put the flow to it. So we very much rely on each other. Very much being by her side from the beginning with IWFCI, the Women's Chamber of Commerce, basically strategizing, discussing decisions, creating, product ideas, and just sort of, basically a sounding board. I think in this world, it's very important to discern your advisors, and you have to discern between someone who's trying to sell you a product or an idea, or someone who's literally objectively advising you how to evaluate. So I think she just, obviously through relationship in any given situation, whether it's in a ministry situation or in a business or in your family, you basically, trust is something that you build with people, and you begin to sort of respect that word of advice at a given time and what have you. So Mum and I very much work together.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so growing up, obviously you knew her before she started having an international Women's Chamber of Commerce type federation. And before that, she talked about how she had kind of pushed back and opposition from men who, weren't so welcoming of women in business. What did you think of how your mother just pushed through that and, started her own thing? I mean, that's pretty inspirational.
Look, it is. And I think it's showing the heart of Mum. Basically, Mum's got tremendous character. If I think about the family line, Mum's family arrived in Australia in 1854 from England, and they arrived at Station Pier in Melbourne. It was there at those times, and they basically were in the insurance game back in England, and they were builders as well. They came from Jersey, and so they were part of, the family name was Passmore Edwards, and they were part of building the churches in Jersey and the ports and things like that. And when they came out to Australia, Thomas Passmore Edwards was the first one that came out, and he came with his two eldest sons, and the second oldest one was called Elijah. And Elijah is my line, and Elijah had 4 sons, and the 4 sons went into the building business. And, of course, then Mum was the third of 3. Diana Gray was her maiden name. And then, of course, then there's us 3 boys. I'm the youngest of 3 boys. But they've always been in the building game, so they pretty much well made their first money over in Perth. So they lived through the 1880s, the Great Depression here, and they knew what it was like to struggle like anybody else. But as the 4 brothers building houses and what have you, they built pretty much most of Northcote in north of Melbourne, High Street, Northcote. And they built in Perth, as I said, and they built in Adelaide and what have you. So even today, the 2 family homes are quite famous and well known in Northcote. They're on Clark Street. One of the houses where Grandma grew up is called Mandalay, which is a wedding reception today. Oh. And then the other one next to it's called Lagana, after the lake in Italy. And there's a bit of history there. But I remember during the stories, my grandmother was a great lady and she passed away in 92. But Grandma used to always talk about her father and how during the Depression he would ride his horse down High Street, Northcote, and he would not let people pay rent, and he would often leave boxes of food at their front door, and they never knew really where it was. But the family always understood struggle and had a good balance about it. And they were very much involved in the Methodist churches back in those days.
Yeah, I was going to say, you shared with us that obviously business is part of your heritage, and that explains why your mother was so involved in business, but also let's kind of transfer to the spiritual dimension. So there's a Christian heritage as well, is that right?
Yeah, look, that's right. So my mother's father's father basically pioneered about 30 Sunday schools right across the slums of Melbourne in Collingwood and what have you. I think if you look at that entrepreneurial spirit, you can translate that into a Christian ministry if you wish. So you think about the 5-fold ministry gifts of apostle, prophet, pastor, evangelist, teacher, those sorts of things. You can sort of have a connection to that in terms of business if you wish. So it's not uncommon that, say, salespeople would have a evangelical gifting. In other words, the ability to self-motivate, to communicate and inspire people. You'll find entrepreneurs very much fall into the apostle category, where basically they're visionary builders. So you can sort of see where I'm coming from.
Yeah,
so I think that sort of entrepreneurial spirit fell into this sort of, visionary building sort of direction with my mother. She had her ups and downs like everybody does over the years, but I think your character is what keeps you steady through the ups and downs, and it's certainly something which I'd like to believe and grateful that I've inherited that spirit, if you wish, of just the strength of God's character, or if you wish, to basically live by faith despite the circumstances, and that sort of has unfolded and guided me in my life.
And so you have the business heritage, you have the Christian heritage, and then you were born into all that. So what did that look like for you in your childhood?
Yeah, growing up, we were in Baptist church as a young man. In fact, the Bible that I use today was the very Bible that I was given at Sunday school in what was called Bourne Baptist Church.
Oh, okay.
And I still have that today, back from 1971 is the year written in the book.
Wow.
And so I've kept that Bible my whole life. It's a Revised Standard Version Bible. And like anyone's Bible these days, it's been well used, and underlinings and writings on the edges, and and when you invest so much time into your Bible, you don't want to lose it. So I had it rebound about 20 years ago, and still use it today. So,
oh wow, that's quite a heritage in itself.
But the interesting thing is that the Baptist church was obviously a good foundation in that sense. But myself, as a young man, probably that entrepreneurial spirit was in me. I was a little bit rebellious during my young years, just pushing the boundaries, getting in trouble, police coming to the house. I was just a little bit wild, as boys are. I don't want to overplay it, but I was just a little bit
Well, the police
wild.
were involved, so that tells us a little something.
What does it tell us?
Well, it was serious enough for the police to come over. Is there a story there you want to share?
No, I don't want to go into all the stories. I don't want to lead people astray.
Well, we get the idea. So a rebellious period.
It was just boy stuff, breaking windows, stealing all the fairy lights from the shops, and just basic low-level stuff that kids get up to. But I showed an overt interest, probably in girls at a young age as well. And I think Mum was basically just observing that Phil's probably just a little bit worldly wild at the moment. So this is quite an important thing for me. So the first impact Mum had was basically saying, okay, look, I need to steer my 3 boys. And so
you're the youngest, is that right?
Yeah, I'm the youngest. So my oldest brother is Michael, Mike Fusco. The middle one's Anthony Fusco, and of course myself. We're all a year apart, 1 year, 2 weeks apart. We're very, very distinctly different. Michael, the eldest one, is our accountant, as we call him. He's a CPA. Anthony, the middle one's what we call our scientist. He's got multiple degrees, and he's just a high IQ sort of guy, and has knowledge on every topic, and very deep with wisdom and what have you. And of course, I'm the marketing entrepreneur sort of one, and you can sort of see how our courses have taken us, but quite an interesting complement when we sort of work together, I suppose.
Yeah, interesting family. I could imagine the conversations over Christmas dinner must be very interesting.
Well, it's because we're all so close in age, so you can imagine the arguing. And I grew to be the tallest of the lot, so so
that has its advantages,
the boss?
Especially if they disagree with you.
Oh, well, maybe not. But I always respected everyone for their different giftings, if you wish. But Mum sort of decided that we needed to maybe steer us. So when we finished primary school, I went to East Ivanhoe Primary School, and she decided to put us into an all-boys school, which was Ivanhoe Grammar, just down the road. And that sort of took me away from the mob that I was sort of involved with at the primary school level. A few of the guys that I was hanging out with went on to the local high school, and it wasn't long after some of them got involved with car theft, and some went on to prison and stuff. I think Mum saw that I was hanging out probably in the wrong crowd.
Right.
So she made the big effort to spend the extra fees to put us to private schools. And then the other big decision that happened, whether it was by decision or just divine intervention, when I was 10, turning 11, my Uncle Phil, who I'm named after, Phil Gray, he came across back in the 70s, there was a bit of a movement in the charismatic movement, if you wish, the sort of Pentecostal sort of spirit was sort of rising in the 70s, and Phil said to his sister, my mum Diana, look, you should come to this church called Waverley Mission, and it's really on the money, and you really need to come and just sort of, and so we went as a family, and basically stayed for the next 10 years. Waverley Mission went on to become known as Waverley Christian Fellowship, and then later they became known as City Life, which is one of the big churches in Melbourne now, on Cathy's Lane out there on the far east of Melbourne, and had a tremendous impact on my life. So you can imagine, as a young man getting in trouble everywhere, all of a sudden I'm sent to an all-boys school, and then we came to this, what was called non-denominational charismatic church, Waverley Mission. By the time I was 11, I was baptised in a pool in someone's backyard, and took it really seriously, I must say. Just really embraced it. And I've always had my mum's always had a passion for justice, and I suppose that's in me as well. And so we're in search of the truth, and so we dig in deep, and we try to understand it. And so church twice every Sunday, Wednesday night Bible studies.
You're listening to The Story. Today, Eric Scatterbo is chatting with Phil Fusco, who's the son of recent guest Diana Abruzzi, who pioneered an international federation that helps women start businesses. As we're hearing, it's clear that both business and ministry are a big part of Phil's heritage. Next, we'll hear more of Phil's story and about his first big ministry venture. All of that is coming up when we return.
The Story.